have today is a slide deck based on a 95-page slide deck from marketing that's got tons of graphs and bullet points and all sorts of benefits and screenshots and stuff. But this one has none of that in it. What I did is I took all of that, I threw away everything that I knew none of you wanted to see at 6 o'clock on a Thursday night for dinner. So what I want to talk to you today about is not the tool so much itself, but the reasons for adopting a tool. Why do we want to adopt a framework? What is the benefit behind looking at a framework technology? So how many of you today are in QA organizations? Everyone? Almost everyone? Have you been in a QA organization in the past as a functional tester or performance tester? So hopefully some of this speaks to you. What I've found in my own experience and in working with customers is that QA organizations follow a natural trajectory. They start off as either a necessity, something that needed to be done because there's a high stakes application or business development that needed to be done, and they took some people from different parts of the organization and said, you need to test this. It's important. Or as teams grow and they get more people, they fight for more resources, maybe they've had a few successes, they can steal from other parts of the organization, or they may be hiring off the street, and they run into different challenges from those that were just getting started when everyone knew each other and came from the business background or had a deep understanding of the business that they were testing. And as they grow into larger or mature organizations, they run into much broader challenges, much more complex challenges that I want to talk about as well. So the constant I've found is all QA organizations follow this trajectory. Whether you remain small and become small, agile, and mature, or you go from a small organization to a larger organization, at some point, everybody looks to adopt some sort of framework, and there's reasons for that. So some of the challenges that these teams experience, such as, and they can think of these as combination factors in any organization. You're either a small team that's immature, or a small team that is mature, or a large team that's immature, large, immature, etc. But in small teams, we deal with things like a lack of resources, limited throughput. If you only have so many people, you can only do so much testing in a day. So you want to optimize the amount of testing that you can do with the limited amount of resources. As you start off as a immature organization and you have a lack of process and an inability to deliver consistency, teams progress to become more mature. They see the need to adopt processes to somehow standardize their deliverables, because maybe the projects that they're working on from one release to the next have changed. So how do we provide the same level of benefit to one project versus the other? And in large teams, we have problems like lack of communication, transfer of knowledge from subject matter experts to those people who might not understand our business applications as well as they do, or maybe offshore resources. The reuse. So things like, I've done a bunch of work in my time in this project. How does the rest of the team benefit from that? Or when IT hands it over to the business for testing, when you get into user acceptance testing, how do they benefit from that work that's been done? And things like a high attrition rate. What do we do in IT when people are good at a job? We promote them out of it. As soon as you've shown that you're able to provide a benefit in a particular role in IT, you're suddenly out of that job. So what do we do when the person who knew the application better than anyone else, or knew the business that it supports better than anyone else, leaves the company or leaves the team or moves on to bigger, better things, becomes a manager and forgets they ever tested anything? Of course, we look to a framework to help us there. Some of the other challenges, and this again applies across the board, things like lack of collaboration between the IT and the business. How do we get the two teams speaking the same language, working with the same information, expecting the same results when they do their testing? The high cost of testing. People are expensive, which is why we started looking to offshore some of our work in the first place. Or look to automate some of our efforts. If we're doing regression testing 80% of the time, we want to be able to automate that work so that we're not having to perform the same tests every cycle of the release. Testing starts too late in the process. By the time you get your hands on a requirements document and you build a test plan, test strategy from that, and then you start actually developing test cases, well, now we're 3 weeks into testing. We haven't tested anything yet. and then again the loss of knowledge through attrition. So when you Google framework, this is almost verbatim the information that you get. Define framework was my criteria. First we get a model, a hypothetical description of something. That's a framework. It's also a new wave inspired indie rock band from Toronto. That is actually the framework, by the way. That is not a framework. In architecture, it's a basic conceptual structure, such as a roof or a building. Something that when repeated and applied over and over again can build larger structures. In software, and this is actually one of my favorites, it's an abstraction layer. It's something that provides services and functionality to our application so that the developers don't need to code it each and every time they need to use it. So they're not writing a message and creating the connection to a server and establishing the communication between the server and sending the message and getting a response back. All the developer cares about is I need to send a message. And this abstraction layer provides that to them by saying this is the information you need in, and this is what I'm going to give you out. That's all I need to know. And in QA, it's a set of assumptions, concepts, and tools that provide support for automation. This is probably the most applicable to using a framework. One of the big reasons why automation fails in any organization is because the people who were selected to do automation in the first place, they might have had some expertise in the area, they're more technical than some of their peers, or maybe they just put their hand up and said, I'll go on some free training and learn about automation. Either way, there's often a period of some success where there's a lot of automation work being done, and then there's a falling off of that effort, where the people who were doing the automation in the first place, who put up their hand to do that work, had exhausted the low-hanging fruit, the things that they knew about. And then, who of us knows every aspect of our business, every application, every function, everything that can be done for the business? When it comes to automation, if you don't have that framework, that blueprint in front of you to tell you what's expected, like the developer, what are my inputs and what am I expected to get out of it, then automation becomes more work than is really effective. So HP Business Process Testing, what is it? It's a centralized storage of reusable test components and assets. It's a definition, it's a framework, it's a library. It's a way for our business or subject matter experts to say, here's what you need to do in order to manually test a login action or a transfer between accounts. I'll use internet banking as an example here because it's something we probably all do, even if you're not in the banking industry. So what are the things that I need to do as a tester in order to manually or automate this application? And then when you break it down, most applications only have a handful of functionality. We as testers take that functionality and assemble it in different ways and come up with hundreds or thousands of permutations of that business application. That's the art of testing. But what we lack in a lot of cases is the blueprint. What are the individual components that we have that when you componentize them and make them modular, you can assemble them together and make any test you want? A lot of times it's the same function over and over and over again with different data, different inputs, different outputs. When we say transfer $1 million, there's a whole different process that takes place in the back end versus when you transfer $10. Or if you try to do a negative transfer between accounts, does your bank account let you transfer a negative sum into your Visa? That'd be nice. So this framework also helps QA teams build for manual and automated functional testing. It's a blueprint. Business process testing unifies IT and the business so that we're on the same page. We have our subject matter experts either from the BA team in the business or within QA, the senior people that are going to lay out the foundation for what's defined for our flows and tests down the road. And they can start that process very early on when the requirements are still being developed. Think of them as use cases.